Absolutely. I went back just a couple of months ago and YouTube Art and watched some of his appearances on Letterman and Carson, and fabulous storyteller.
Incredible. Piggybacking off the cartoon stuff, you guys and gals are amazing. Eric John, Rocky and Bullwinkle, yeah, they're classics. Absolutely,
Yeah, I
sure.
watched. We had one here in the South. Maybe it was all over the country. It was a hound. Was it Huckleberry Hound?
Huckleberry Hound.
Huckleberry Hound. So maybe it was a nationwide thing. Maybe these things weren't just geographical, but
Sure.
Huckleberry Hound is one I remember as well.
Absolutely. Foghorn Leghorn, you're right. JC Farina, I say, did somebody tell me these podcasts was great? There you go.
That's it,
Um,
JC.
Joel Bateman, old school man over here. I like Jim McMahon, possibly the toughest quarterback in Joel's opinion. Jim McMahon.
I wouldn't argue that. He was a tough guy, a talented guy. And I think sometimes that talent does get covered up by his toughness. I think people look at him as a
Oh, that's
tough
interesting.
quarterback.
Okay.
And I think sometimes he doesn't get credit for the talent that he had because everybody goes, boy, that was one tough dude. And he would take on defensive backs, defensive linemen, linebackers. He was aggressive. He was in your face, but he was talented as well.
It kind of reminds me a bit of Lambeer because people look at him as the bruiser of the Pistons. But, man, this guy can shoot the three. Bill Lambeer wouldn't miss free throws, 89% career. But he'll be
Absolutely.
remembered as being the, really, I guess, the assault dog of the Detroit Pistons. So,
That's back, Avi, when they let guys play basketball. And that's that era we were talking about early with the Celtics and Casey Jones. And later on,
yeah.
come the bad boys. Detroit finally got over the hump and beat the
Yeah.
Celtics, and that sent them on their way to a couple of NBA championships. But yes, sir, Rick Mahorn and Bill Lambier, they were
Oh.
certainly enforcers for the
And I
bad
do
boys.
remember, guys, not to sound like a basketball geek, speaking of Rick Mahorn, Washington Bullets, when they were known back then as the Bullets, the Bruce brothers, Jeff Ruland, and Rick Mahorn, the original Bruce brothers.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Getting back to the cartoon topic today, a cartoon like Tom and Jerry would be considered too violent, probably today, wouldn't it?
Probably so, yeah.
You're right about that. This date in history is definitely giving you guys some joy, and we appreciate that because it's diverse. And speaking of sports, this date in history, December the 27th, 1956, Bill Sharman ends the NBA free throw streak in 55 games. And I want to bring up Bill Sharman for a second, guys. He was the first guy to use calisthenics as a coach. He coached the Lakers, which was sacrilege for a Celtic to coach the Lakers. But, guys, he coached that 72 Laker team. Will Chamberlain. Elgin Baylor did not play. Or did not compete for the championship because he actually only played 9 games that season. They won 33 games straight, which is still a record. And Bill Sharman was the first coach to introduce calisthenics and told the players to regularly exercise before and during practice. Prior to that, a lot of the guys would smoke cigarettes and drink beer in the locker rooms, believe it or not. Bill Sharman was instrumental in the Celtics championship as well, in all of their championships, until he retired in 1961. He was the first sharpshooter in the NBA, Dell.
And there's a lot of things to tie in there that you just mentioned. He also later became a good TV guy, analyst for basketball.
You're right.
Good sense of humor, smart guy, knew the game well. The 72 Lakers, I remember it well. The 33 games in a row, Gail Goodrich, Happy Harrison. And I just don't think he gets enough credit, and some people might find that hard to believe. Wilt Chamberlain changed basketball. I think he was the greatest offensive machine that ever played. He had one season where he averaged 50 points a game. There's a Gamecock tie into that. He had 100 points in one game that year for the 76ers. The later guy who would later become the greatest basketball coach in Gamecock history, Frank McGuire, was the head coach of that Warriors team, the Philadelphia Warriors, when Chamberlain averaged 50 a game and had a 100-point game. But that 72 Lakers team was a special, special team.
Special team. Frank McGuire also played for the Knicks before they were included. Guys, it was called the BAA back then, Basketball Association of America. And you're right, McGuire was a great coach. He was there when Chamberlain dropped 100, and Chamberlain also led the league in assists one year just because he felt like it. I mean, just because he wanted to.
And he never fouled out of a game.
Never fouled out of a game, guys and gals. And also averaged, with overtime included, 46 minutes a game. No, I'm sorry. If I'm not mistaken, it was 49 minutes. There's only 48. So including overtime, the guy never sat down a minute during a basketball game. Incredible. Just incredible numbers. This is, Joel Bateman agrees. We also have Taekwon agreeing, Chamberlain's underrated. Guys, he was also a guy who was an amazing athlete, could have probably competed in several Olympics, too, and played for the Globetrotters, so there you go. 1964, this date in history, the Supremes first appear on the Ed Sullivan Show, singing Come See About Me. Del, I'll bring up the Supremes in a second. I always thought that Ed Sullivan had a striking resemblance to that of Richard Nixon. Do you agree? A little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. I totally would agree. And Mike Mooneyham might agree with this. Also, Avi, I thought he had sort of a resemblance to a guy you're not going to know,
Okay.
but was probably the greatest wrestling promoter in South Carolina. He promoted Columbia. He promoted Charleston, a guy by the name of Henry Marcus. I've always thought that that Ed Sullivan and Henry Marcus had a resemblance. Maybe sometime you can YouTube Henry Marcus or bring him up, Google him. I thought there was some kind of resemblance to Ed Sullivan as well.
Fan of the Supremes, Del?
Some of the stuff they did, that was Diana Ross, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Some of the stuff they did was good. Of course, she went on and had a great career on her own as well.
Yes, she did. Absolutely. And guys and gals, this is live right here. This is the symmetry that Del and I have. Something you can't prepare when you got two guys who know what they're doing here and are pros. Henry Marcus. Yes, I do see the resemblance.
I mean, to me, there's a little Ed Sullivan resemblance there. But
there is.
he was a tremendous promoter,
Yeah.
Mr. Marcus. I know his son Barry. Mr. Marcus lived to be in his 90s, and
Right.
he was something else. Mike Mooneyham has written about him, and was very good friends with Henry Marcus. But I had the privilege. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina. The first wrestling match I ever went to live was in 1970 or 71. Jack and Jerry Briscoe against Rip Hawk and Sweet Hansen. Henry was the promoter, but I myself got to work in that very building that I went to as a kid and watched matches, the Township Auditorium, and Henry Marcus was still promoting then. So that was a dream come true for me to work in that building, my hometown, and Henry promoted. So
back then, a little goosebumps back then because of that?
Oh, absolutely. That was a special night for me the very first time I worked in the township, because I could look out and show you the places I sat as a kid when I would go watch.
That's so incredible. That is so incredible. That's, man, and you're looking back into your past saying, I remember watching people like me that are standing in this ring right now, and here I am. I've made it. Guys, why not bring this up too? Yeah, we love Mike Mooneyham. He's a friend of Dell's, a friend of mine as well. The Wrestling Gospel, according to Mike Mooneyham. Check it out. Right here, according to Mike. Great articles. Mike is an amazing writer.
He is a fabulous writer and does great stuff. All his articles are good. Mike is a wrestling historian, and everybody in the wrestling business knows Mike, and not one person has ever spoken a bad word about him, because you can't. He's a wonderful human being.
That says it all. 1968, this date in history. What a fun segment, man. Apollo 8 returns to Earth. That happened in 1968. 1979, Del, soap opera Knots Landing premieres on CBS. Kind of reminds me a bit of The Green Room. Was there ever a soap opera, maybe Dallas, that you were into, Del, at all?
This is funny that you should ask that. And again, this is part of the symmetry that you talk about. When I played football at Carolina, the 5 starting offensive linemen from 1983, my junior year, and my senior year, 1984, we remained the 5 starters for those 2 years. We had a lot of experience under our belt. I still think it's the best offensive line in school history. I think our offense production showed that. But 5 tough guys that prided themselves on blowing holes open for our running backs and protecting our quarterback. But every day at 1:00, days of our lives, everybody together in my room, and we would miss class to watch Days of Our Lives, like sands through the hourglass. So are the days of our lives. I'm McDonald Carey, and these are the days of our lives. But us 5 guys were like 5 old grannies. We watched Days of Our Lives every day. And Avi, I had an old-fashioned brass spittoon, and we all dipped Copenhagener stuff. So you got 5 old rednecks sitting around spitting into a
spit tobacco and watching
Days of Our Lives.
Kelly Coleman, that's hilarious. Yeah, that's a great visual. I agree with Bebop, because you know what? I think it's great. I was a Dallas guy, Del. I love Dallas.
Oh, Dallas was great. Listen, Who Shot JR? Still one of the most watched TV shows ever.
I read somewhere the other day that's about 40 years back since that whole story arc took place, about 40 years ago. So that's incredible. I remember watching that. As for 80s cartoon, this is Gus. The Real Ghostbusters, my one and only. Yeah, Ghostbusters, great. Love those guys. Dan Aykroyd, underrated comedian and actor. I still watch Days. Bebop, she watches Days of Our Lives still. So there you go.
Good.
Yeah.
I think some of the people that were on it when I was in college are still on that show.
Still on
Quite
that
possibly.
show.
Yeah.
Still causing some shenanigans and issues there on that show. Guys, 1980, another basketball-related issue that took place, and I say this is an issue because Calvin Murphy got into a fight, broke 7'1". He's about 7'2", because I'm reading this from what I wrote, guys. They're wrong. I know my basketball. Artis Gilmore was not 7'1". He was about 7'2", 7'3".
Yes,
he actually
was.
broke Artis Gilmore's jaw. Calvin Murphy, guys, was a pugilist. This guy was a boxer. I don't know if he was a Golden Gloves, but he was a boxer before he played basketball. Also, he began his longest NBA free throw streak of 78. For those that know basketball, Calvin Murphy did not miss a free throw, and is also, as you mentioned, in terms of his post-career with some other players, you brought up Bill Sharman. Calvin Murphy, a great color commentator for the Houston Rockets.
Mm-hmm. Great player. Remember him well.
5'9", took out a big 7'3" Artis Gilmore.
Artis Gilmore, absolutely.
Unreal. 1981, two more of these. Oiler Wayne Gretzky becomes the fastest NHL player to get to 100 points. Took him only 38 games to do so. Del, were you a Wayne Gretzky guy? Did you enjoy Gretz?
I did, because of the fact he was so good and the Oilers were so popular. Was it Grant Fuhrer that was the goalie for those teams? I think it was. Those Edmonton Oilers teams, boy, they were something special with Gretzky. And there's a little bit of a Columbia, South Carolina connection now, because Dustin Johnson, the best golfer on the planet, is from my hometown, Irmo, South Carolina.
Oh.
And he dates Gretzky's daughter. Now, they've been together for several years, Dustin and her. I think it's Pauline Gretzky. But, yeah, I was a big Wayne Gretzky fan. How could you not be? And then when he ended up in L.A. with the Kings.
Oh.
Was it L.A. Kings?
L.A. Kings. He just took off. He took off. Became one of the greatest. Socrates reference, J.C. Farina. Del, my mom would watch Days of Our Lives every day. Doug and Susan, I remember those names from J.C.
Oh,
Farina.
yeah.
Mr. O'Dwyer, thank you for joining us. Love Dallas. Well, you were here before. Love Dallas 2 was hugely popular over here. It was on rerun for years. Eric John, I still watch Dallas. Watched the reboot as well. Seen the original series 3 times, though. Yeah, man, you're better off for it. A great written show. Great performances by Mr. JR, and, of course, Patrick. Forget his name. Patrick, maybe somebody can help me.
Duffy.
Patrick Duffy. You're right.
And Larry Hagman.
Larry Hagman, who just recently passed a couple years back. Last little tidbit as it pertains to history, and this particular date, December the 27th, 1987, Steve Largent sets all-time NFL record for career catches when he catches his 752nd pass.
Unbelievable. I used to love watching the Patera coach teams up in the Northwest. Was it Jack? Ken's brother, the pro wrestler, former pro wrestler. And Steve Largent, is it Steve Largent?
Steve Largent, yeah.
And Jim Zorn, the left-handed quarterback. Yep. Boy, to me, they were like who was the guy? John Stockton and Karl Malone. Zorn and Largent. Yeah, absolutely.
They're in my better chemistry game that will debut next week. They're in there. Yeah. Amazing chemistry. Good. Also underrated, though. Very underrated.
Big time underrated. I totally agree.
Guys, this has been an incredible show that literally feels like it just started half an hour ago. That's because of you guys who are able to make these topics as fresh and well-received. Every single time we bring some of these topics to the table, you guys contribute and add so much more, and we appreciate that. Joe loved I Dream of Jeannie. I did as well, but I just turned the sound off back then. I won't get into that. Dallas was my favorite show. I have all the DVDs. Not a better villain than JR, yeah. And guys and gals, not a better way to end Unmasking the Truth in terms of 2020 than what we just brought to the table now. We know there are some serious issues that we're breaking as we were broadcasting live, but we're going to deal with that. We're going to continue unmasking the truth. Figuratively and literally speaking, we're going to do that every single Sunday. And 2021 excites me. I have a quote for Del Wilkes that I'm going to read right now. It's from writer Arthur Conan Doyle. He said, once you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. I agree wholeheartedly. Absolute truth may not be attainable for some, but here on Unmasking the Truth, it is in fact ever present. A man that cannot tell a lie if he tried sits to my right. He dedicates himself to the truth, and nothing but, because anything else is a waste of time. I welcome